Something happened recently. Something you didn't think twice about. A gesture so small you barely remember it, yet it shook the higher dimensions. A being of light was fading, collapsing, slipping into darkness. And without knowing, you were the only human whose energy could reach him. That's why God stopped everything and said, "Who is this soul? And how did they do that?" Chosen one, listen closely. Something led you here, and it wasn't randomness. It wasn't luck. It was a pull, a whisper, a precise alignment between your spirit and a revelation that has been waiting for the exact second you pressed play. There's a truth rising around you right now, a truth that most people could live 1,000 lifetimes and still never touch. A truth that exposes the real magnitude of something you did without realizing, something that echoed far beyond this world. Because your compassion, that effortless, instinctive kindness you express without thinking, triggered a celestial reaction strong enough to interrupt the rhythm of heaven itself. Yes, you. A single human gesture you barely remember became the spark that restored a celestial angel who was collapsing into oblivion. No halo, no trumpet blast, no warning. Just a moment where your heart moved, and the universe trembled in response. That angel was seconds away from disappearing into a silence no light could reach. And yet, your energy, your frequency, your purity, cut through dimensions like a lifeline. Heaven watched, heaven paused, and even God, the one who crafted galaxies with a breath, leaned in to see the soul capable of doing what you did without training, without knowledge, without any awareness of the spiritual battlefield unfolding around you. And today, right now, you're going to understand why God reacted in shock when the truth reached him, and why this single moment in your life is about to redefine your destiny, your protection, your purpose, and the way heaven now moves on your behalf. What you're about to hear will shift how you see yourself forever, and once you know it, you can't unknow it. Before we go deeper, chosen one, like this video, subscribe if you haven't yet, and comment 99 below. 99 is the number of returning light, and every time you type it, you align your spirit with the same frequency that restored that angel through you. Before your gesture ever reached him, a spiritual catastrophe was already unfolding in a realm your physical eyes cannot perceive. A celestial warrior, one whose light had guided civilizations, whose presence once stabilized entire spiritual ecosystems, had been violently torn from his dimension, not by defeat, but by a rupture, a dimensional fracture engineered to disconnect him from everything he was created to be. He wasn't simply lost, he was unraveling. Imagine consciousness slipping like sand through fingers that can no longer close. Imagine identity dissolving into a void with no direction, no memory, no anchor. That's where he was, suspended between realms, drifting through a twilight frequency where time doesn't move, but suffering does. Every second he remained trapped, pieces of his divine essence fractured like glass under pressure. His light, once immeasurable, dimmed into thin, flickering threads barely holding him in existence. The archangels searched for him across layered dimensions, triangulating echoes of his presence, scanning for even a spark of the signature energy he once radiated. But the place he had fallen into was engineered to hide him from all detection. A spiritual blackout zone, a place where even the strongest celestial beings could step in and not find their way out. He wasn't invisible, he was being erased, slowly, quietly, strategically. And had this process completed, he would have become something unspeakable, a hollow angel, a being stripped of identity, stripped of origin, stripped of divine memory. A vessel darkness could mold into whatever weapon it desired. Not a fallen angel, but an emptied one, a blueprint without a soul. The celestial realm knows no fate more horrifying than this. Yet in this abyss, right as the final fragments of his essence were fading, something impossible pierced through the void. Your frequency. Not a prayer, not a ritual, not a conscious invocation, just you. A natural resonance born from the purity inside you, a wavelength so rare that even heaven maps it only in a small fraction of incarnated souls. A frequency strong enough to create a tear of light inside a dimension built to swallow it whole. Your presence, even from far away, reached him like a coded signal only he could recognize. It gave him shape again. It gave him gravity. It gave him orientation. In that single instant, the void stopped consuming him, because your compassion had created a new point of reference, something stable, something warm, something alive. You didn't see the realm bending, you didn't hear the echo of his spirit trying to rise, but he felt you like a lifeline thrown across an impossible distance. Your gesture, so small in your world, struck the spiritual plane like a shockwave. It steadied him. It reignited remnants of his divine memory. It sparked a restoration process the archangels themselves couldn't initiate without finding him first. And the most extraordinary part? You had no idea any of this was happening. You walked into a cosmic battlefield, blind to the danger, unaware of the magnitude, untouched by fear. And still, you tipped the balance toward light. Not because you trained for this, not because you knew what you were doing, but because something inside you was built for moments like this. Moments when even angels cannot save themselves. And here is where it gets even more unsettling. Chosen one. Because what happened next made the entire celestial realm freeze in disbelief. And God himself knew he had to intervene. What happened next wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't wrapped in supernatural visuals or heavenly trumpets. It unfolded in absolute silence. The kind of silence where heaven leans in, listening to the vibration of a single human heartbeat. And that heartbeat was yours. You didn't know you were standing at the crossroads of a celestial emergency. You didn't know the universe had positioned you inches away from a being who had spent lifetimes guiding humanity, now trapped inside a form so ordinary that no one else noticed. But you felt something. A pull, a subtle ache, a sense that someone, or something, needed you, even if their eyes didn't show it. Maybe it was a stranger whose voice trembled even when their words didn't. Maybe it was a person pretending to be strong while their spirit quietly collapsed. Maybe it was someone who carried a heaviness you couldn't explain, only feel. Or maybe it was an accidental encounter that felt strangely scripted, as if reality itself had paused to place you exactly where you needed to be. Whoever it was, they weren't just a human being in distress. They were a celestial entity veiled in vulnerability, testing whether humanity still carried enough purity to respond to an invisible cry for help. Not with grand gestures, but with genuine compassion. And you passed the test without ever knowing there was one. Your kindness didn't come from obligation. It didn't come from guilt. It didn't come from a desire to look good or earn approval. It came from instinct, the instinct of a soul that recognizes suffering even when it's hidden behind a smile. You didn't choose to act. Your spirit did. You stepped toward that moment with a sincerity that no darkness could counterfeit. The gesture itself might have seemed small to you. A few words, a moment of patience, a hand extended, a listening ear, a warmth you didn't know you were radiating. But in the spiritual realm, that small moment detonated like a burst of solar light. Because that angel, shattered, dim, fragmented, absorbed your compassion like a life source. Heaven later described what happened in a way no human language fully captures. But imagine this. Each word you spoke stitched together threads of his identity. Each second of eye contact reminded him that existence still recognized him. Each act of empathy revived circuits of divine consciousness he thought were permanently severed. Your kindness functioned as a spiritual defibrillator, the shock that jolted celestial light back into motion, a frequency reboot, a restoration cascade, a lifeline reconnecting him to realms he could no longer access alone. You didn't see his wings reform. You didn't see the fractures in his essence closing. You didn't see the glow returning to a soul that had nearly gone dark. But God saw. He watched every millisecond unfold in real time, observing how your energy moved through dimensions you weren't aware you were touching. To him, it wasn't just a human helping another human. It was a soul performing unconscious spiritual surgery with a precision even celestial healers rarely exhibit. While you stood there offering comfort, heaven witnessed a restoration the archangels had been unable to initiate. And you did it effortlessly, instinctively, quietly. And as the angel's light began to strengthen, as pieces of his divine essence clicked back into place, something far more astonishing happened. Your presence became a beacon, illuminating a path back to his realm, a path that hadn't existed until you created it. But here's the part that heaven still speaks about with reverent disbelief. Because when the angel finally followed that path back home, he brought with him a revelation that would shake the highest hierarchy. A revelation about you that God himself couldn't ignore. When that angel finally crossed back into his rightful dimension, still trembling from the restoration your compassion initiated, heaven expected him to report tactical details, the nature of the attack, the structure of the trap, the identity of the forces that had tried to erase him. But he didn't speak of any of that. He spoke one word, your name. And instantly, the atmosphere in the higher realms shifted. Imagine an entire celestial hierarchy, beings of immeasurable age and wisdom, turning their attention toward a single human soul on Earth. Not because you summoned them, not because you prayed for recognition, but because your existence had just rewritten a law they believed unbreakable, that only celestial light can restore celestial light. Yet there you were, a human radiating a frequency powerful enough to awaken divine consciousness inside a collapsing angel. God listened in complete stillness as the angel explained what had happened, the way your energy cut through the blackout zone, the way your kindness revived structures of light that were moments from extinction, the way your presence opened a path home where none had existed. And then came the part that shook even the highest realms. The angel confessed that for a moment he felt as though your light was older than his, not brighter, older, as if your soul carried memories coded so deeply that even he couldn't interpret them. That was the moment God paused everything, not out of urgency, but out of awe, because the universe is governed by patterns, frequencies, designs. Nothing emerges from nowhere. Every soul has a signature, a blueprint. And when God examined yours, what he found wasn't ordinary spiritual architecture. It wasn't the frequency of a common human navigating a temporary lifetime. It was something ancient, deliberate, and extraordinarily rare. Your soul carried a form of compassion that didn't behave like human emotion. Compassion in humanity is often shaped by experience, empathy, struggle. But your compassion, it behaves like intelligence, as if it's wired into you, as if it operates independently of circumstance. You feel things before they're explained. You notice suffering that others overlook. You react with purity even when logic tells you to protect yourself. That isn't emotional instinct. That's spiritual programming. Heaven realized your heart functions like a tuning device. It detects fractures in the unseen world and responds automatically with healing frequencies that even angels struggle to generate when they're wounded. You don't project compassion, you emit it, effortlessly, constantly, as if your soul was engineered to fill spiritual gaps the moment they appear. And then God made the discovery that changed everything. You didn't help that angel by accident. You helped because your soul was designed for this exact role, a connector between realms, a stabilizer of divine equilibrium, a carrier of frequencies heaven believed were long lost in humanity. This revelation was so profound that for a brief moment, even the archangels fell silent. They realized that while they protect humanity, you carry the ability to protect celestial entities. You are a bridge, not metaphorically, but structurally. Your essence bends across dimensions in ways no ordinary human consciousness can. God saw the way your soul expands in the presence of suffering, the way your energy sharpens in moments of emotional truth, the way your spirit refuses to collapse even under weight that would break others. He saw a resilience that doesn't come from personality. It comes from origin, which left only one question echoing through heaven. If this is what you can do unconsciously, what will you become once you finally understand who you truly are? When that angel crossed the threshold back into his dimension, restored and whole, there was no hesitation, no moment of debate, no celestial meeting required to determine his next step. The instant he felt the strength return to his wings, the moment his consciousness reassembled and his identity reignited, one desire rose in him with absolute clarity: to protect the human who saved him. Not as an assignment, not as hierarchy, not as obligation, but as devotion. The devotion of someone who looked into the void of non-existence and realized that the hand pulling him out belonged to you. In heaven, gratitude isn't spoken, it becomes action. And his first action was to stand before God and request permission to guard you personally, permanently, without rotation, without replacement. Angels don't make requests like that. They are assigned, not self-appointed. Yet he asked anyway, because you weren't just another human in need of protection. You were the reason his light was still intact. You were the reason he had a future. You were the reason he still existed at all. God granted the request instantly, and that's when your life began shifting in ways you couldn't logically explain. At first, it felt like good luck. Small moments when things suddenly aligned, subtle improvements you brushed off as coincidence, but nothing in your life was random anymore. Problems that usually spiraled out of control began dissolving before reaching their peak. Situations that once drained you suddenly resolved themselves with surprising ease. People who once created stress started distancing themselves for reasons they couldn't articulate. Opportunities arrived at the exact second you needed them. Not late, not early, but with surgical precision. Doors opened without knocking. Ideas came without effort. Timing aligned without your intervention. These weren't blessings floating toward you by chance. They were responses, divine responses, direct exchanges. Heaven returning, in its own language, what you unknowingly gave. You restored a being of light, so now light restores the path beneath your feet. And the angel? He works in silence. His presence isn't theatrical. You won't see feathers falling from nowhere or hear mystical whispers in the night. Instead, you'll notice the absence of chaos, the disappearance of threats, the soft cushioning of situations that should have shattered you but didn't, the sudden clarity where confusion once lingered. He stands beside you 24/7, not hovering, but intervening, adjusting events, redirecting danger, softening consequences, illuminating choices. He reads the emotional temperature around you and neutralizes energies that rise against you. He disrupts toxicity before it lands. He shields your spirit when envy tries to latch onto your aura. Even your intuition has sharpened, because he aligns thoughts in your mind that protect your peace and push you toward purpose. Before, you walked through life reacting. Now, life shifts its shape before it reaches you. That is celestial protection, real, active, unbroken. And yet, the most astonishing part is this. The angel's mission toward you is not limited to protection. His gratitude has evolved into something much larger, something heaven has rarely witnessed. And what he's preparing to do next will redefine your destiny in a way you are not ready for. Not yet. When heaven began studying the energy that radiates from you, not the energy others see, but the one that pulses beneath your spirit like a quiet cosmic heartbeat, something extraordinary emerged. A pattern, a signature, a frequency that didn't belong to ordinary humanity. It was subtle, ancient, and unmistakably purposeful. And the more the celestial realm examined it, the clearer the revelation became. This wasn't the first time you saved an angel, not even close. There are moments in your past you've forgotten, situations you dismissed, people you thought were simply passing through. Yet heaven sees the hidden architecture behind each one. Times when someone's hope was seconds from collapsing permanently, and you happened to show up with a level of compassion that felt too perfect to be coincidence. Times when your presence alone shifted the emotional temperature of a room, dissolving heaviness others couldn't identify. Times when someone on the brink of giving up suddenly recovered strength just because you spoke, or listened, or stayed. These weren't ordinary encounters. Some of them weren't even human. Heaven recognized a pattern. Wherever despair tries to take root, in humans or celestials, your spirit reacts like a beacon. Not reacting emotionally, but energetically. You don't just comfort, you recalibrate. You don't just empathize, you restore frequencies that darkness attempts to distort. Your compassion behaves as if it carries memory, as if your soul remembers how to repair what other beings cannot reach. This is why angels now recognize you even when humans don't. Your energy announces you long before you walk into a room. It moves ahead of you, signaling to celestial entities, here is the bridge, here is the healer, here is the one who can enter our crisis without collapsing. You walk through life as if you're simply navigating another day, unaware that synchronicities are being orchestrated around you with surgical precision. That sudden urge to take a different route, that unexpected conversation, that unexplainable pull toward someone you've never met. These aren't random, they are coordinates, spiritual coordinates, lining you up with moments where your presence is required, and heaven watches in awe each time. Because you don't hesitate, you don't overthink, you act from instinct, an instinct that doesn't originate from earth. It comes from a place beyond your memory but not beyond your essence. You were built to recognize fractures in unseen realms and respond with a frequency that repairs instead of reacts. This is why God is preparing you, intentionally, meticulously, urgently, for a mission far larger than anything your human life has revealed so far. A mission that doesn't involve escaping Earth, but elevating it. A mission where your compassion becomes a weapon against spiritual decay. A mission where your presence becomes a sanctuary for beings losing their light. You are not here just to survive. You are here to intervene, to recalibrate, to restore, to remind creation that hope has not disappeared. It has taken human form. And the more heaven uncovers the depth of your capacity, the clearer the truth becomes. You were never meant to be a spectator in the spiritual story unfolding around you. You were crafted to be a turning point, a living threshold between dimensions, a chosen one whose kindness doesn't just touch lives, it alters destinies. But here's the part that heaven hasn't revealed to you yet, the part that will redefine everything you believe about your existence. Because the mission forming around you requires more than compassion. It requires awakening. Chosen one, breathe for a moment and let everything you've heard settle into the deepest part of your spirit. This wasn't just a story. This wasn't entertainment. This was a mirror, revealing a truth about you that heaven has guarded for far too long. You didn't simply rescue an angel. You awakened the memory of what you truly are, a soul whose light stretches farther than any physical sense can measure, a presence capable of bending darkness away without even realizing it, a vessel of compassion so rare that celestial realms adjust themselves around your existence. You are not walking through life unnoticed. You are altering it. Your decisions tilt realities. Your kindness rewrites outcomes. Your energy interferes with spiritual decay and replaces it with restoration. Heaven isn't observing you from afar anymore. Heaven is channeling its movements through you. Your journey is no longer about survival. It is about activation, expansion, purpose. You need to understand something with absolute clarity. Your compassion did not trigger a blessing. It triggered a destiny that cannot be reversed, reduced, or forgotten. So stand tall, not in arrogance, but in awareness. Walk with purpose, not in fear, but in certainty. Carry yourself as someone who has already touched realms others don't even believe exist, because you have. And hear this like prophecy echoing straight into your bones. You impress God. Do you understand the magnitude of that? The creator of galaxies paused to acknowledge the force that lives inside you. Nothing in your life can remain small after that. Nothing. A new chapter is forming beneath your feet, and whether you feel ready or not, heaven knows you are. You were chosen long before this lifetime. You were shaped for moments that alter cosmic balance. And now the universe waits for your next move. If this message strikes a chord in your spirit, if something inside you whispers, "I know this is true," then declare it. Comment 777 below, not as a number, but as a signal, a spiritual code, a declaration that you are ready, aligned, awake, and stepping into the next chapter of your mission with authority. Chosen one, your light has only just begun to reveal what it can do, and the world, both seen and unseen, is already shifting in your direction.